I wasn't supposed to be at Caitlin's office that day. That's what I keep coming back to. It was one of those impulse decisions, the kind that feel harmless in the moment. My last client meeting downtown had finished early, and instead of heading straight home, I took a left turn on instinct. Picked up dinner from the Thai place she liked, the one she always said reminded her of our honeymoon stopover in San Francisco. Penang curry, no spice for her. Extra spice for me. The food was still warm in the passenger seat when I parked outside her building. Caitlin worked in marketing for a boutique firm in Belmead. Sleek place. Lots of white marble and succulents in gold-trimmed pots. I used to love visiting her there, watching her switch into work mode, charming clients and colleagues with that effortless, polished presence. She had this ability to control a room without even realizing it. The receptionist barely looked up as I walked in. I signed myself in, took the elevator to the 6th floor, and made my way to her corner office. That's when I saw it. The moment was ordinary on the surface. Her desk bathed in soft light from a modern lamp, her laptop open to a spreadsheet, a faint trail of music playing from her speakers. But my eyes zeroed in on something that didn't belong. A mug, white ceramic with a gold rim, tucked next to her monitor. It had a large cursive, "R" printed on the front. Below it, a little red heart. I stood there, just staring at it, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. She didn't notice me at first. Her back was to the door, shoulders slightly hunched as she typed. It was the kind of focused posture I used to admire, so completely in her element. When she finally glanced up and saw me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes the way it used to. "Zach?" she said, voice surprised. "What are you doing here?" I held up the takeout bag like a peace offering. "Thought you could use a dinner break. Figured I'd surprise you." She walked over and kissed me. Quick, polite, the kind of kiss you'd give an old friend, or maybe someone you used to know better. "That's sweet," she said, though her tone had this distant quality to it. She cleared some papers off the little conference table and gestured for me to sit. I did. We ate, chatted about our days. Hers was busy, exhausting, same old. Mine was not bad. Meetings ran short, traffic **ked. The usual. But the mug kept pulling my focus like a magnet. It sat there smugly, a soft declaration of something unspoken. At one point I asked, casual as I could manage, "New mug?" She looked at it, then back at me with a practiced kind of shrug. "Oh, that? One of the interns left it. I keep meaning to return it." She said it quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. I nodded, but something in me didn't buy it. I knew her office like I knew our kitchen drawers at home. Caitlin didn't let clutter accumulate. Definitely not on her desk. And an intern's mug? With a romantic little heart on it? It didn't make sense. But I didn't press her. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, I think your mug has cheating energy?" We finished dinner, and I told myself I was being ridiculous. People leave mugs behind all the time. And a heart? It's just design. I kissed her goodbye in the parking lot. She said she had one more email to send and she'd be home late. I sat in my car afterward, staring out at the lit-up office windows. The food sat like a stone in my stomach. The next night, we had plans to go to a gathering at a local bar. An old colleague of hers, someone from her first agency job, was throwing a birthday thing. Caitlin asked me to come, said it would be low-key. I agreed, though I felt weird about it for reasons I couldn't quite place. When we arrived, it was louder than I expected. A rooftop setup, neon signs, drinks already flowing. Caitlin was greeted like a celebrity. People hugged her, called her Katie, handed her drinks she didn't even order. I hung back at first, letting her do her thing. Then it happened. We were standing near a group of people she used to work with when someone asked, "Oh, Caitlin, who's this?" She smiled, wide, almost too wide, and said, "This is Zach, my roommate." Roommate. The word didn't land right. It felt like a slap dressed up in sarcasm. Everyone laughed. One guy raised his beer and said, "Ah, got it. The legendary roommate." Another added, "Nice to finally meet the mysterious man behind the walls." I laughed too, nervously. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I was overthinking it. But as the night wore on, the phrase stuck with me like a splinter. She didn't correct herself. She didn't clarify. She just let it hang there, like it was somehow easier to dismiss our life together than to explain it. On the drive home, I asked her about it, half joking, trying not to seem bothered. "Roommate, huh?" I said. She gave a tired laugh and rubbed her eyes. "Oh God. Yeah. Just being funny. You know how work people are. Always joking around." I nodded, but something in her voice rang hollow. That night, as I lay in bed next to her, listening to the soft tap of her phone screen in the dark, I thought about the mug again. The way she didn't blink when she said it wasn't hers. The way she introduced me like I was a temporary fixture in her life. Something shifted in me that night. It wasn't a dramatic, explosive feeling. It was quiet, subtle. A slow opening in a door I didn't know existed inside me. Like when you hear a faint noise in the middle of the night and convince yourself it's nothing, but sleep never comes after that. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that she was just tired, overwhelmed, going through a phase. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was paying attention. And the thing about cracks, tiny ones, the kind you think you can ignore, is they never stay tiny. They deepen, spread, and eventually something breaks. That night, as Caitlin turned away from me in bed, murmuring a good night without really meaning it, I stared at the ceiling and replayed the events in my mind. The mug, the heart, the letter R. Roommate. A name that wasn't mine, in a home I thought we built together. I used to believe that trust eroded like cliffs, slow, inevitable, and visible only from a distance. But now I think it happens more like rust. Quiet. Creeping in places you never thought to check. One morning everything looks solid, and by nightfall, things are flaking apart in your hands. That's how it started with Caitlin. After the mug and the roommate comment, I told myself not to spiral. We'd been married 5 years, long enough to build something real. Long enough to assume I knew her. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I couldn't unsee. Patterns. Subtle changes. And it wasn't just me overanalyzing. These were shifts. First, it was her schedule. Caitlin had always worked late now and then, client calls, campaign pitches, staff meetings that bled into happy hours. But this was different. She was out of the house 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. And not just late. Sometimes she wouldn't get home until after midnight. No text. No call. Just a breathless apology the next morning, usually while tying her hair back with one hand and sipping iced coffee with the other. She'd smile and say, "Sorry, babe." It was chaos. We ended up getting drinks after the client review. At first, I nodded along. We were both professionals. We understood each other's hustle. But even then, something about her tone felt off. Like she was reciting a line. Then came the business trips. Caitlin had always traveled for work, but never like this. Random Wednesday departures. Back-to-back weekends away. She'd give me vague destinations. "Oh, the firm's sending me to Charlotte. Or maybe Nashville. I'll text you when I land." Sometimes she didn't. Sometimes I'd wake up to blurry hotel selfies with the caption, "View from the top, sleeping face." She never showed her face. Just the skyline. Or her wine glass on a windowsill. Always just enough to answer questions I hadn't asked yet. Then there was the technology lockdown. At home, her laptop used to sit open on the kitchen counter. She'd work while we cooked dinner, answer emails between episodes of whatever show we were trying to finish. But now it was different. The laptop stayed shut. Password. Guarded like a vault. I only noticed because one night I went to plug my phone into her charger and accidentally bumped her MacBook. The screen lit up with a message I'd never seen before: Face ID required. Too many failed attempts. Try again later. Face ID? That was new. I asked her about it, half joking. Upgrading your security? Planning to start trading crypto behind my back. She laughed too quickly. Paranoia runs in the office lately. One of the clients had a data breach. Everyone's locking their stuff down. It's nothing personal. I said okay. I even smiled. But in the quiet that followed, I felt a weird kind of loneliness settle into my bones. Then came her phone. It used to sit face up on the coffee table or the nightstand, pinging with notifications we both ignored. Now it was always on silent. Face down. Sometimes she took it with her to the bathroom, even the shower. Once I picked it up by mistake, thinking it was mine. The lock screen didn't even show previews anymore. Just new message. No names. No hints. She saw me holding it and didn't say anything. Just walked over, took it gently from my hands, and mumbled something about needing to respond to a group thread from work. That night, I lay in bed listening to the water run in the bathroom. Her phone buzzed twice on the counter. I didn't look. I didn't need to. Whatever was happening, she didn't want me to see it. And yet, despite all the signs, I kept rationalizing. Because that's what people do when they're afraid. They bend reality around the pieces they don't want to accept. They call lies white and distance space and secrets privacy. I started noticing other things too. Smaller details that would seem innocent on their own, but together formed a picture I didn't want to admit was real. Like the lingerie. Caitlin had always liked nice things, but she wasn't someone who bought a lot of it. She had a drawer's worth pieces I knew well. But lately, she'd started bringing home new sets. I only discovered them by accident folding laundry one afternoon. Tags still on. Delicate lace, unfamiliar styles. One set was a color I'd never seen her wear before. Deepberg *NY. It looked expensive, but I never saw her wear any of it. Not once. Not for me. Then there were the perfumes. She rotated through 2, sometimes 3 fragrances I could usually identify in a second. But one night, when she came home late, she smelled different. Muskia. More masculine, almost. I asked teasingly, trying something new? She said she'd sprayed one from a sample bottle in her purse. Felt like mixing it up. But the next morning, I found the same scent on the jacket she wore to work, stronger now, like it had been reapplied. She wore it again 2 days later. It wasn't hers. I knew because I'd never smelled it in our house before. It didn't come from her drawer. It came from somewhere else. Someone else. Her mood changed too. She became muted. Less reactive. Conversations felt like trying to get a radio signal through static. If I told a story about work, she'd nod and say, "That's nice," without looking up. If I joked about our neighbor's dog digging holes again, she'd smile faintly, then scroll through her phone. And when I tried to really reach out, ask her what was wrong, if something was going on between us, she'd say things like, "I just need some space," or "You're being intense lately." And I'd back off because maybe I was being intense. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was what marriage looked like after 5 years, a soft decay. A slow unraveling. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, that hollow feeling stayed. That sense of her slipping through my fingers while smiling at me from across the table. One afternoon, while folding laundry again, because that had become my version of meditating, I found something else. A receipt in her jeans pocket. 2 drinks. 1 charcuterie board. 1 dessert. A small bar downtown. Timestamp, 11:42 p.m. last Thursday. I hadn't seen her that night. She told me she'd stayed late to finish a pitch. Said they were barely out by 10. I stared at the paper until my eyes blurred. Then I tucked it into my wallet and never mentioned it. Because I wasn't ready to confront her. I wasn't ready to hear her lie to my face. Not yet. Instead, I started noticing the little things she didn't say. When she texted me working late, I started watching the clock. When she said back in town Sunday, I started wondering who knew she was gone. When she smiled at me across the dinner table, I tried to remember if she used to smile differently. There's a strange kind of pain that comes from seeing someone you love become someone else slowly and in front of you, like a time-lapse you can't stop. You try to keep up. You pretend. You tell yourself it's just a phase. But deep down, you know. You feel the shift in the silence. You feel the way they hug you, like someone closing a door behind them. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. The mug. The name. The silence. The lingerie I never saw. The new perfume. The dinners for 2. The password I never had. The warmth that wasn't for me anymore. Piece by piece, it added up to something I couldn't ignore. And somewhere between denial and dread, I realized the truth. I'd been trying to hold together a puzzle that no longer fit. She was already gone. She just hadn't left yet. It was a Thursday when I forgot my tablet. Just a stupid mistake, something that should have ended with me swearing in the driveway and turning around. But I didn't know as I pulled off I-65 and turned back toward Belmead that everything was about to unravel in the quietest, most decisive way. Caitlin had told me she was out of town that weekend. Some reunion college friends, she said. An annual tradition they'd been trying to restart. I remembered nodding as she packed, folding soft sweaters and slipping a pair of heels into her carry-on. I might be out of service for most of Saturday, she'd said. We're staying at this lake house with terrible Wi-Fi. I'd believed her. Or maybe I'd wanted to. That afternoon, I came home around 4:15 to grab my tablet for a client call. I wasn't planning to stay long. In fact, I left the car idling in the driveway. But the moment I stepped out, I noticed something odd. A silver SUV parked along the curb. It wasn't one I recognized, sleek, newer model, probably European. Tinted windows. Plates from 2 counties over. I paused in the driveway, instinctively checking my surroundings like someone who's just heard a strange noise in the middle of the night. Nothing seemed wrong. No lights on in the house. Just quiet. But the car. It didn't fit. I walked toward the front door and noticed something else. It was unlocked. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. A sliver of light leaking from inside. My heart skipped, then stuttered. Caitlin never left the door like that. Even when she took the dog out, she always locked it behind her. She was paranoid like that. I pushed the door open slowly. No alarm beep. No barking. Just the faint sound of music drifting from the living room. Soft jazz, something I'd never heard her play before. The scent hit me next. A rich blend of candle wax and red wine, cut with something floral. Not her usual lavender. I took a cautious step inside, eyes adjusting to the low light. My tablet was in the kitchen, sitting on the counter where I'd left it. But I didn't move toward it. Because that's when I heard it. Laughter. Her laughter. And then a man's voice, low, confident, familiar. I moved slowly, like I was in someone else's house. The hall stretched longer than I remembered. I followed the sound, my feet barely making a sound on the wood floor. When I reached the edge of the living room, I stopped. And that's when I saw her. Caitlin, curled up on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, wearing the oversized cream sweater she used to steal from me during cold nights. Her head was tilted back in a laugh, her fingers resting lightly on the chest of the man whose lap she was sitting in. He was smiling at her, holding her glass as she reached for it. And there it was, the mug. The white ceramic with the gold rim. The R and the heart. Resting on the coffee table between them, beside a second glass of red, half full. Next to it was my old leather bracelet, one I thought I'd lost at the gym weeks ago. I stared at it, blinking like it might dissolve under the weight of what it meant. Caitlin glanced up. Her eyes landed on me. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She didn't even look afraid. She just looked, annoyed. Like I'd interrupted something. Like I was the problem. Zach, she said flatly. Not surprised. Not remorseful. Just inconvenienced. The man shifted beneath her, adjusting his posture. I recognized him instantly, though we'd never been formally introduced. I'd seen his face once on her phone, her old campaign partner, I think. He was the kind of guy you only met through 2 degrees of separation. Neatly dressed. Beard trimmed. Confident in a way that doesn't require volume. Hey, he said. Not a greeting. Just a placeholder. Caitlin stood slowly, setting her wine down. I didn't expect you home. I couldn't find words. My mouth was dry. I stared at her like she might suddenly transform into someone else. Someone I remembered. I thought you were in Hendersonville, I finally managed. She tucked her hair behind her ear. Plans changed. That's it? My voice came out strained, thinner than I wanted. She sighed. Not guiltily. Resigned. Zach, this isn't really the time. I glanced back at the door. I could have walked out. Should have walked out. But instead, I stepped forward just once, as if getting closer might make this make sense. How long? I asked. The man cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in his wine. Caitlin folded her arms. Does it matter? Yes, I said. It matters. There was a pause. Then, reluctantly, she said, a while. That was it. A while. Not months. Not weeks. Not some confession with tears and regret. Just 3 syllables. I stared at her like she'd just spit out a foreign language. You lied to me. About everything. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just glanced at the man behind her, and for a moment I saw it, the shift. The flicker. The allegiance that used to be mine, now gone. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she said. You weren't going to tell me at all, I replied. Were you? No answer. In the silence, I heard the soft tap of our dog's paws upstairs. He hadn't come down. Maybe even he knew better than to enter this space. I looked around the room. Every detail struck me like a betrayal. The wine I'd bought for our anniversary. The blanket my mom had given us last Christmas. The couch we chose together after scrolling through reviews one night, laughing about how adult we finally were. And now here it was, a stage. For a performance I hadn't been invited to. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. Didn't demand names or timelines or closure. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I left. I walked back through the hallway, past the shoes I didn't recognize at the door, past the vase of wilting flowers I'd brought her a week before. I closed the door behind me, stepped into the fading light, and got into my car. The engine idled, but I didn't drive. I sat there, both hands gripping the wheel, the music from inside still faintly audible. It played on like nothing had changed. As if the night were just another Thursday in our marriage. But I knew better. This wasn't a crack anymore. This was collapse. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even know where home was anymore. I drove for hours without a plan, letting the road unravel in front of me like a question I didn't know how to answer. My phone buzzed twice, but I didn't look. I didn't want to know if it was her. I already knew what she wouldn't say. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a small roadside motel about 2 hours east of Nashville. The kind with flickering signs, worn carpet, and TVs bolted to the dresser. I paid cash. I didn't ask for Wi-Fi. The guy at the desk handed me a key card without a word, like he could smell the unraveling on me. Room 107. It smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. The kind of place that forgets people as quickly as they come through. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at nothing. The silence was deafening, no dog paws, no humming dishwasher, no Caitlin brushing her hair in the next room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, locked inside a stillness that didn't feel like peace. I couldn't sleep. I lay flat on my back, hands folded over my stomach, staring at the cracked ceiling. My thoughts were too loud. I kept hearing her voice in my head, "Does it matter?" And then that other one, the stranger on our couch, saying, "Hey," like we were all characters in some sitcom with bad timing. At some point in the night, I realized I hadn't eaten. There was a vending machine down the hall, but I didn't go. The idea of chewing something felt absurd. By morning, the world outside looked exactly the same. And somehow that pissed me off. Birds still chirped. The sun still came up. People were still walking their dogs and ordering coffee and smiling at strangers. I wanted it to be darker. Stormier. I wanted the sky to look like it knew what happened. On the second day, I drove aimlessly again. I passed gas stations, antique stores, a faded church with a crooked sign out front. I didn't listen to music. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove until my gas tank reminded me I was still a person with responsibilities. When I finally stopped for fuel, I caught my reflection in the side mirror and barely recognized myself. Red-rimmed eyes. A face that looked 5 years older than it did 2 days ago. My shirt was wrinkled. I had forgotten to shave. I looked like someone in the middle of a disaster that hadn't finished happening. It was only on the third day that I went back. Not because I was ready, but because I knew I couldn't sit in limbo forever. My job had called twice. My boss left a voicemail saying he hoped everything was all right, but he needed those documents by Monday. Life didn't care what had cracked open inside me. I drove home just before sunset. It was quiet in Belmead as it always was, the lawns trimmed and the sidewalks clean. Our neighborhood looked exactly how we left it, peaceful, ordered, pretending not to notice the chaos that slipped through its windows. The front door was locked now. I still had my key. I opened it slowly, half expecting to see her on the couch, a smile frozen on her face. But she wasn't there. The house was empty. Too empty. She hadn't cleaned up. The wine glasses still sat on the coffee table. So did the mug, the R1, now crusted with what looked like leftover tea. The couch throw was tossed carelessly over the armrest, and a single earring lay by the corner cushion. Not hers. I'd never seen it before. I didn't touch anything. I went straight upstairs to the bedroom. My side was untouched, still made the way I left it. Her side, though, different. Her closet had changed. New dresses hung there, styles I didn't recognize. More form-fitting, newer brands. Some still had tags. There were shoes that looked too expensive for her to brush off as impulse buys. A black blazer with shoulder pads, 3 unfamiliar pairs of jeans. A small perfume bottle with a name I couldn't pronounce sat on the dresser. The scent reminded me of him. I stood there, watching it all in silence, until I felt something loosen in my chest. Not release. Not relief. Just resignation. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was a life she'd already started living. And I was the one still catching up. I walked into the kitchen next. On the fridge was a magnet from a resort I didn't remember visiting, Hilton Head, South Carolina. The kind of souvenir you buy at the last minute. Beneath it was a postcard with no message, just a photo of a pier and a sailboat. I checked the pantry. Half her snacks were gone. The chia bars she always hoarded were missing. Her favorite cereal box sat folded shut, nearly empty. She'd packed in a rush. Or maybe she'd packed without intention. Like she wasn't sure if she was really leaving yet. Or if she even needed to. The only thing she left in perfect condition was the vase on the kitchen table. A bouquet of hydrangeas, now wilted, brown at the edges. I had brought them home the week before. She'd said thank you, kissed my cheek, and went right back to her phone. I picked up the vase. The water was cloudy. A single petal floated on the surface like a sinking promise. I should have thrown it all away. The flowers, the mug, the bracelet she never asked about. I should have burned the whole scene out of my memory. But I didn't. I left it all. Because that was the moment I understood. I wasn't trying to save a marriage anymore. I was walking through the wreckage, deciding what was still mine to take with me. I grabbed a box from the garage, one of the old banker's boxes we'd used when we first moved in. I filled it with what mattered to me. My laptop, our wedding album, a few old family photos, the leather notebook where I'd written down the things I wanted to tell her but never did, birth certificates, tax documents, my grandfather's watch. That was it. Everything else felt contaminated. I passed the guest room as I walked back down the stairs. It was open now, made up neatly, blankets folded with sharp corners. Her things were gone from the nightstand. She'd been sleeping in there. Of course she had. I stood in the hallway for a moment longer, just breathing. It didn't feel like grief exactly, more like stepping off a train that's been moving too fast for too long. Everything hurt, but in that distant, delayed way. Like my emotions hadn't caught up yet. Like my body had figured it out before my mind could. I closed the front door behind me. No note, no explanation, just the quiet thud of finality. I put the box in the trunk of my car, sat behind the wheel, and exhaled for the first time in 3 days. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a while I knew I wasn't going back. I moved into the rental near Lake Murray 3 days after I left the house. It wasn't much, one of those half-furnished places they advertised to traveling nurses and short-term contractors. The walls were an off-white that made everything look tired, and the couch creaked if you breathed too hard near it. But it had a lock I controlled and a quiet that didn't ask me to pretend. There was something comforting about the emptiness. Nothing in that place reminded me of Caitlin. No shared toothbrush. No framed vacation photos. No laughter trapped in the walls. Just me, my box of essentials, and a dog-eared legal pad where I'd started writing down everything I'd missed. It began as a list, dates, receipts, inconsistencies. But soon it became something else. A log of betrayals, big and small. I wasn't doing it to punish her. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do with it. I just needed the truth somewhere outside my head. And I needed help. That's when I hired the investigator. His name was Lawson, recommended by a friend I'd confided in over coffee after work. Lawson was an older guy, probably late 50s. Looked like he belonged in a noir film. Rumpled sport coat, quiet voice, eyes that saw more than they let on. I don't want drama, I told him on the phone. I'm not trying to catch anyone in a tabloid scandal. I just want clarity. For myself. Clarity, he said, scribbling something. We can do that. Within a week, he had photos. The first one was of Caitlin outside a hotel in Chattanooga, standing under a canopy with her phone to her ear, smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in months. A man stood beside her, same guy from the couch. Or I assumed. They were checking in together. One bag each. The next batch showed them eating at a rooftop restaurant I recognized but had never been to with her. They sat close, hands brushing across the table, wine between them, sharing bites of dessert like high school sweethearts. She wore a navy wrap dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was curled. There was nothing scandalous in the photos. Nothing that would break the internet. Just the kind of *Macy you can't fake. The kind you don't share with someone you're just reconnecting with. Lawson slid them across the table like puzzle pieces. You want more? He asked. I nodded. Yes. He got more. Salon visits under a name I didn't recognize. Billed to a prepaid card I hadn't known she had. A second phone line. Restaurant charges in cities she claimed to be avoiding for work. A registered rental under her crypto wallet with a name I hadn't seen since college. Some alias she must have used for writing retreats or tax write-offs. The unit was in an artist loft downtown. One key. One resident. She called it a creative retreat, in a message Lawson pulled from the building's delivery log. I visited the place once. Stood across the street in my car, engine idling. Through the window, I saw her inside one evening. Backlit by a hanging lamp, barefoot, pouring wine into the same mug I'd seen in her office. The one with the R. She didn't look rushed or guilty or cornered. She looked comfortable, like she belonged there, like that was home now. The hardest part, though, wasn't the stakeouts or the receipts. It was what I found in my own house after I finally figured out how to access our smart system archives. We'd installed the cameras 2 years ago after a string of burglaries on our street. Caitlin thought it was over *LL, but she let me mount one inside, pointed at the entryway and part of the living room. I hadn't checked the stored footage in months, maybe longer. I told myself I'd only look through the past few weeks, but once I started, I couldn't stop. And there he was, the man with her smile. He'd been to the house a dozen times, maybe more. Sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes at night. Once in a hoodie and jeans carrying a tote bag. Another time wearing one of my t-shirts, the navy one with the worn collar. Feeding our dog. Sitting on my couch. Laughing at something on TV while Caitlin curled up beside him. There was one clip that stopped me cold. He walked through the front door holding a set of keys. Not hers. Mine. The spares I kept in the drawer by the fridge. I recognized the old keychain I'd made in high school. Silver and beat up, with my college mascot dangling off the ring. He had them. I slammed the laptop shut. It wasn't just infidelity anymore. It wasn't even just deception. It was invasion. It was betrayal that had grown roots in my walls, used my life as a hiding place. I took a walk that night around the lake, trying to remember how it had all started. Not the cheating, not the unraveling. Before that, before the mug and the silence. Before the version of Caitlin I couldn't reach. I remembered movie nights on the floor, spontaneous road trips, the way she used to look at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I remembered the version of us that felt real. Then I remembered the first night she said she needed space, and how I had agreed without asking what kind. By the end of the week, Lawson handed me a folder. Inside was everything. Timestamps, invoices, images, building entry logs, even a printed text thread between Caitlin and R that he'd legally obtained through data scraping a shared iCloud backup. Some of it was mundane grocery lists, jokes about clients. But one exchange stood out. It was a screensh *T. R. When are you telling him? Caitlin. Soon. He's starting to notice things. R. Want me to back off? Caitlin. No. Just don't come by the house for a while. I think he's watching. Watching. I sat with that word like it was something dirty. I wasn't watching her. I was surviving her. That night I printed every file, bound them in a folder, marked it with a sticky note, for Caitlin. Then I called my lawyer. I'm ready, I said.